I3, breaking news from the next level.
February, as you know, is Heart Month. We talk a lot about cardiology issues in the weeks in February, but this is Catherine Needham. She has been our way before. She has Cycle Balance here in Chattanooga, and she came today to talk about how PCOS actually can be connected to your heart health, something I never knew. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me back.
So every time you're here, I get this great education, because when I think of PCOS, maybe like a lot of people, I think of it just in terms of fertility.
Yeah.
But you were telling me it's actually a whole body effect.
It is. PCOS gets lumped in with reproductive issues, and understandably, it comes to the forefront of a woman's mind when she's trying to conceive, and it becomes more acutely problematic. But it's a whole body metabolic disease, and that means it's affecting her body and the way her body works for all of her, probably at least her adult life. And that means that because there are so many common these high prevalence of cardiovascular risk factors in women with PCOS, we want to make sure that women who are somewhere on this kind of PCOS spectrum, they get screened so that they understand where their body tends to live when it comes to their insulin resistance, which is a major cardiovascular risk factor that is an underpinning for a lot of women with PCOS. We want to make sure that they understand where their hormones fall, their testosterone, especially for coronary calcification scores. We want to make sure that they understand their individual cholesterol levels and all these factors so that they know maybe in their 20s or 30s how their body tends to function so that they have a long, healthy life well after they're done having kids.
Okay, so let me pause you. And I know when you're here, you want to take your time to talk to the women out there watching. But I do think it's relevant to let people know that you yourself have PCOS, right?
Yeah, or somewhere on this spectrum. When I faced infertility about 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, there was this new conversation around multiple types or subtypes of PCOS, where there's like a lean presentation and a more classic PCOS presentation. And more data has come out, and it's been really good to see that conversation change so that women like me who've had our fertility affected can see what we need to do and personalize the approach for the either subtypes or a spectrum, however you kind of view PCOS.
Right. And so here you sit, 4 children later.
4 children later. Yes.
And so when the women come to you, and often it's couples together, I guess, talking with you,
Yes.
You really look at each one as an individual puzzle to solve, if you will. There is
Absolutely.
no one approach.
There can't be, because it's such a broad diagnosis that is not well defined by really any organization. I mean, there are several organizations that have put out criteria for it, but it can get implemented by providers in different ways, and so women may fall through the cracks, or they may have this bit of it but not this, so you can't get a diagnosis. And for me, what's not important is what the singular, most succinct diagnosis is for the female partner. What is important is defining different attributes of balancing out her cycle, making sure that her fertility is optimal, because the body will not allow fertility if there's anything that's a threat to its more survival, its more basic needs.
Yeah.
And with metabolic dysfunction kind of being one of those root causes of inflammation, it can really affect her fertility, and we want to know that now before it affects her long-term health.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, because there are some women who might not be interested in having children, but the PCOS, to your point today, is still impacting you.
Yes, your body, the way your cardiovascular system functions, and it's about your heart, of course, but it's also about your vessels and how healthy they are, and how well that, if you think of them as like pipes, how well they can adjust to changes in blood flow. And if you're somebody with PCOS who has higher cholesterol levels or triglycerides or any number of other things, that can affect the tiny little fragile cells that line your blood vessels and make it harder for them to do their job, which then it's a trickle effect to the rest of your tissues, because you can't get blood flow as well, or it could be affecting those tissues directly.
Yeah. You know, there was a time, I can remember not long ago, even 10 years ago, where the idea of being told you have PCOS was a very, very frightening
It felt like a death sentence to me.
Yeah.
It really just felt like my whole world was shaken.
Yeah, but it's not that way.
I don't think so. I don't think it has to be viewed that way, because if we think of it as a spectrum, where basically wherever we find that you live on this spectrum, we can maybe move you from an 8 out of 10 to like a 2 or 3 out of 10 so that we don't have it affecting your fertility. Or if you think of it more as like a bucket where your genes are taking up some amount of that bucket that you can't really control, but then some of your day-to-day choices are filling up that bucket or perhaps taking water out of the bucket to keep it from overflowing. Because when it overflows, you might have more overt infertility. So if we can keep it from overflowing, keep your body healthy, and then hopefully you will have a very fertile time when you're ready to conceive, but then also know enough about your body to have a long, healthy life and avoid pregnancy when you're ready to do that.
Okay, so her company is called Cycle Balance, but the website is CatherineNeedham.com.
Yes.
We'll show you that because aren't you about to launch something?
I am. I did a webinar 2 weeks ago, and it had enough response that I recorded it and am now going to launch it as a course on my website for women who want to learn how to cycle chart and troubleshoot their own cycles. It's basically the education and the cycle charting information, the physiology of women's sex hormones that I usually give to my patients on their first appointment, but done in a way that's more accessible. It's at a $45 price point, so it's much more accessible to somebody who might not be able to even consider other options. And we go through even different things you might see in your cycle chart and what that might mean.
Then here is the website for you to see, CatherineNeedham.com. If she's shown you nothing else, I hope today, it is that if you are living with PCOS, you can live with PCOS, and she can help you get even better. Great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
The plural of fish is also fish. So, get 2 Arby's classic fish